Hey all, this is Davey T from Field Sports Scotland. This is another episode of FSS Chatback. That's Foxtrot Sierra Sierra Chatback. I sounded like SSS last week, so I'm going to try and overemphasize the FSS in future. Now, thank you all for the response for my Arcane Optics review, as well as some of my other posts and my last two podcasts. This is amazing that I'm starting to get back into this again, back into the swing of this for a weekly podcast. It's quite hard to come up with content that I can talk freely about, but it is important for you guys to know some of the stuff. And I know the last couple of weeks we talked about legislation. Now, today I think we're going to talk about how to get into deer stalking, what's going to take, and why we do it in the first place. Now, I really don't want to get into the politics side of things in regards to deer numbers and whatever. Both governments, Scottish and English government, have come out and said, the Scottish government, way before the English government, as per usual, has come out and said that there is a deer numbers crisis. And in regards to nature restoration and woodland management and agriculture and all the other big industries that are around about it, to them it's a crisis point. So the numbers need to come out. Whether you agree with it or not, a sustainable number of deer is actually good for the population of deer. Now, I don't really want to get into other aspects of how you want to control numbers. Some of the things out there are absolutely ridiculous, but culling is genuinely the best way to control numbers. It always has been, always will. It's the most humane way as well. A lot of people turn around and say medically castrate. Well, in 20 years' time, there'll be no deer then. If you medically castrate, if you poison them or whatever, it's not going to work. New Zealanders know this. They're struggling with deer population and whatever, but the New Zealanders are slightly different because nothing that is on their islands is actually native to their islands. So, genuinely, well, they could get away with doing whatever the heck they want. And we always look at the Australians and the Kiwis as being at the forefront of being, I don't know, right there up with nature, ecology and that sort of stuff. In fact, some of their practices that I would disagree with as well. Anyway, we're not going to go down that road. We're not going to go into politics. We're not going to go into any of that. We are going to talk about how you, as a normal person, you out there, who really fancies an idea of, I don't know, getting some actual decent meat in your freezer, getting a bit healthier, and actually contributing to the nature recovery of the British Isles, and the conservation of the British Isles, how you can get involved and how to start. Now, there's lots of boring parts to this. There's lots of boring parts, and so I'm trying not to going to put you to sleep. I really don't want to put you to sleep because otherwise you'll never come back to one of my podcasts. But there is ways of getting into it. Now, you don't need to get into it professionally. You can become a professional over time and get professional at what you do over time. But genuinely, you can get in very, very simply. Now, the easiest way in to get deer stalking and to see if it is for you, I mean you, right? There's a big thing in this. People don't forget about it. There's this whole romanticism of walking about the Scottish hillside, stalking into this majestic stag that is like 20 points in their antlers, 20 tines in their antlers, and just looks so amazing and paying that and getting that royal. Now, I'm going to tell you, most of us in a lifetime don't do any of that, even professionally. Most stalkers get the odd buck here and there, the odd stag here or there, or the odd hind or doe here or there. That is what most recreational stalkers do. Unless you want to pay some real big money to the estates, I don't say that I'm going to say get a chance to do it once in your life. I don't need to do it. I've did it as on the working side. So I don't care about trophies. I'm not a great guy. I'm a meat guy. That's it. Harvest for meat and harvest to call numbers for sustainable levels for nature recovery. That's what I do. That is what I specialize in. Now, for you guys getting into it, you're still contributing. You're still contributing to the nature recovery side of things, the conservation side, the biodiversity side. You are still putting money back into the industry, whether it's recreationally or commercially. You you're still part of that. You're still part of that process. You're just as important as me. You're just as important in as all those other stalkers, as the guys who are on the estate managing deer heads for beautiful specimens of deer, or the other guys that are controlling numbers. You're just as important. So just bear that in mind. But you need to know this is for you, because there's an emotional side of this. Taking an animal's life is not the easiest thing in the world. Whether you have got so many good intentions, how humanely you do it, it is still an emotional attachment with that animal. You have taken its life, and you have to respect that side of it. So first and foremost, for you, if you ever want to get into recreational stalking, take a guided stalk. Go with a professional guide, whether that's on a roe deer or a muntjac or a red stag. Pay the guy who knows, use his equipment, get yourself some outdoor gear and a decent pair of boots. But do that. If you like it the first time, go a second time. Go a third time. Go a fourth time. Before you know within yourself that you know every aspect of it. So guys like me who are in this industry, we didn't shoot our first deer first. No, we didn't. Most of us old school tagged along or worked as a ghillie or learned every other aspect of deer management before we even got to shoot our first deer. There's a huge responsibility in shooting your deer. Shooting's the easy part. That's the easy part. The hard part is knowing what to do with the deer afterwards and having that emotional attachment with that deer. You don't just have to physically shoot that deer at 100 yards or 150 yards. You have to go and process that deer. You have to be hands-on with that deer. You have to be intimate with that deer. And then over the years, you will learn that you will share blood with that deer. You will cut yourself or whatever while processing that deer. You will share blood with that. That will be in your system. So bear it in mind. You have a huge responsibility to know this is for you before you get into it. So go for a guided stalk. That is the most important thing. Go and enjoy. Learn from that guide. There's hundreds of us out there. I do it, but there at Field Sports Scotland, but there is lots of other guys all up and down the country, various costs, various budgets. You can get a day stock for as little as £40 in some places. So just search about if that's what you want to do. Second of all, if you want to progress, you have to apply for a firearms certificate. Now, the firearms certificate process is a very long one, and this is the hardest part of it. This is the boring part. You apply for your license. You apply for a caliber that you want to choose. So if it's just deer stalking you want to get yourself a reasonable size caliber, mid-range to top, high range, high velocity, mid-velocity, high velocity. Well, they're all high velocity, to be fair. The mid-range caliber rifle to a high caliber rifle, that is probably the best way to explain it. You choose that caliber. Now, I personally, if I was starting off in stalking, bear in mind there's other aspects of pest control. When I started off, we basically started doing it professionally. I trained in doing what I do. So to do it as a job. But as a recreational stalker, if I was having a one rifle just for shooting deer, I would go for a 6mm BR or Creedmoor or 6.5 Creedmoor, PRC, that sort of stuff. There is plenty of options out there in caliber choice. Bear in mind the application process, and maybe one day I'll do a podcast on the full application. When you apply for your firearm and your chosen caliber as a rifle, you also apply for, at the same time, apply for a moderator. It'll help your ears. Trust me. Go back 15 years when I used to shoot rifles without moderators. You soon get tinnitus and certain things happen to your ears. So get yourself a suppressor or a moderator on your ticket as well. And you also ask for the amount of rounds you need. Now, I wouldn't ask for any more than 100 rounds. If you've got enough rounds to use, and then we'll go into the details of what all that means. The one thing I wouldn't do if you are wanting to get into stalking. Now, this is different for the target guys who want to shoot recreationally, want to shoot big calibers out to 600 yards or 1,000 yards at Bisley or whatever, right? I am saying this from a personal point of view in regards to the recreational stalking side of things. Do not become a member of a club. There is many other ways that you can learn about your firearm and learn about the whole subject of stalking. If you want to get into stalking, club rules doesn't really work. All that does, I'm not saying don't become a member, but don't use that to get your firearm certificate. Use stalking as getting your firearm certificate. You will get a lot more experience in the field than what you would on a range. There's one thing knowing how to shoot your rifle correctly, but there is another thing of being able to do that when all the elements are against you. So learn more about your rifle in the field than on a range. Ranges are good for shooting targets out to 650 yards in a controlled condition and stuff like that. But you will find yourself struggling to open your tickets and things like that if you solely use a range to get your firearm certificate. If you are wanting to get into deer stalking, you can use regular guided stalks, so get to know your guide. You might even get some discounts in the future or some free days or whatever, or get to help them out of that. Get to know your guide. And your guide will help you in other aspects in regards to your firearm certificate as well. Get to know your guide. Oh. What happened there? My focus just went on my camera. Sorry about that. Right, yeah. So that's a good thing about podcasts, because they just happen live. I just get on with it, and there's not a lot of editing involved. Yeah. So get to know your guide, and he will be able to sort a lot of things out for you. The other thing about it is, you have then proof to the police that you are interested in deer stalking, that you are interested in doing this as a job, and it's not the case of just not as a job, sorry, as a pastime, and it's not just the case of you just want a gun for the sake of having a gun. And there's a lot of people out there that do that. Sorry, there's a lot of people out there who genuinely just want a gun for the sake of having a gun. Rifles are tools. All the stuff that we use in the stalking industry are tools to help us do our job better. And you as a recreational stalker, that is exactly what it is. Now, again, the firearms process is a long one. Don't stop. Don't wait. Just sit there and wait for your firearms certificate to come through. You're gathering evidence now. So your first FEO visit, on your run up to your first FEO visit, you might have been able to get out another couple of stocks guided. You enroll into a DSC-1 course. You don't need your firearms certificate to go into a DSC-1 course. A DSC-1 course will give you the fundamentals of deer stalking. And once you have done all of that situation and you've got to your firearms certificate, that is when the less boring stuff happens. But to be honest, quite a lot of the journey is not boring. Quite a lot of the journey is quite fascinating, and learning a legislation, learning different species of deer, learning fieldcraft, learning all the things that you need to know to be able to have that first solo stock. And then when you get that first solo stock, well, after a year or so of building this journey up, and you finally were able to get your first solo stock, you've secured a piece of land. That's another thing. Use the period between applying for your firearms certificate and your firearms inquiry officer coming out and doing your interview. Use that period to try and get some land, some stalking land, whether it's a syndicate place or whether it's a or whether it's a local farmer or a friend, just somewhere that you could turn around and say, yeah, I do a little bit of stalking on my mate's 100-acre farm, and that is all evidence to give to the firearms inquiry officer that you are serious about having a firearm to do what you want to do in regards to deer stalking. So build all this evidence. It's evidence building for your first interview with that firearms inquiries officer. And that's actually the most important interview, because then he takes his information. Now, he doesn't make a decision. He cannot tell you whether you're going to get approved or not. He can only do the relevant checks. He only does the relevant checks. He only gives you recommendations of where your gun cabinet should be. There's another point. Choose where your gun cabinet is. You don't need to go expensive. You can pick up a reasonable good gun cabinet, even second hand on the Stalking Directory or something like that, for around about £100. You don't need to go to any major expense for a gun cabinet, right? And then that's when you start looking at budget. But during that period on your journey, you're not just gathering evidence, you're gathering experience, you're gathering a life journey, you're gathering education. You're also looking at equipment. You're probably going to end up researching what rifle you want to get, You don't need to go expensive. Go on to Gunstar or go on any of your local gun shops, and they all have packages all set up for stalking. Don't need to buy brand new. Buy second hand for your first rifle. Now, like for many years, I used a Parker Hale 308. I hate 308, right? I hated it. I was like 17 and... 16. No, actually, I was 14 when I got my first firearms certificate. But I was like, when I first got my own rifle that wasn't an estate rifle, I think I was like 17. And it was an old Parker Hale 308. And I must have shot maybe 30 deer with that. And I killed it. Don't get me wrong. It was way older than I am. It would probably be close to... it would be close to about 40 years old. Oh no, actually probably about 60 years old now. It's probably about 20 years older than what I was. And yeah, I picked it up for £225 out of Ballater. That was like, what? That was a gun shop. I had a 6x42 scope on it. I don't even know what kind of scope it was. I can't remember. It was an old... No, I don't know. It was probably an old Smith or something like that. But 6x42. I shot rabbits, foxes with that 308. I shot deer and hares and all sorts of things. I had a 22LR as well. That was another thing. But as I said, I was learning to do a job. I was preparing myself for a future in this industry. I wasn't... so I had also the 22LR. I had a couple of shotguns. I also had a 243 as well. And even my 243, I spent £125 on that. And that was an old Mauser action rifle. I can't even remember what it was. Oh, I can't remember what it was. It was an old wooden stock thing, and it looked like it came out the war. But so there's a lot of things happen with a lot of cheap stuff. You don't need to go major expensive. If it shoots, it kills. Pretty much. If you can get it shooting straight, like I've got to admit, I'm a bit of a snob these days when it comes to certain things, because I know more about ballistics and what you need to do this job professionally and stuff like that, optics wise and stuff. And probably that is where the difference between professional stalking and recreational stalking comes in, you start looking at your equipment more and you start investing more money into it. But you don't need to do that to get into it. Most important thing to start off with is get yourself kitted out with a decent pair of boots. Even if you can invest £200 or even £150 on a decent pair of waterproof boots, Bestert, Mindel, Hacks, there's quite a lot of makes out there. Do your research on it. You might be able to do some deals. I had Gry Sport Pro Gamekeepers for a lot of years, and they were very good. And they only cost me 90 quid. The Bester boots have been fantastic for me. I've had Bester boots now for 6 years, and I still find them comfortable as the first pair I ever put on. So genuinely, that's an important thing. Sorry, that's an important thing to invest in. The other thing is you don't need expensive jackets and things. Most of your outdoor retailers have a kind of a cheap section where they've got regattas or whatever. Some base layers. Don't go anything noisy though, so you don't want like Kagul style jackets of that for stalking, and it just becomes noisy, scraping while you're crawling in the heather or whatever. Just find something that is lightweight, warm, and quick drying. Quick drying is really important. So you don't really need a lot of money to get into stalking. There's loads of advice out there. And when you do get into it, you're actually, as I said before, you are part of nature recovery and conservation. There is aspects of it that is a must-have. You will need in the future your firearms certificate, deer stalking certificate, and I don't care what anybody says. Legally, you don't have to, but shooting insurance. Join one of the organisations, SACS or BASC or Scottish Gamekeepers or whatever. You have to have that liability insurance when you're out. It covers your backside if anything goes wrong. If you shoot livestock, you shoot somebody's £10,000 bull, for instance, or £20,000 bull, at least you're covered. Really, at least you're covered. That farmer is going to be pissed off that you killed his prize bull, and it happens. Do you know what? It's never happened to me. Touch wood. The whole cabin's wood. Touch wood. It's never happened to me, and I hope it never happens to me, but at least I've got the cover there if I need to. And if you're in Scotland, BASS still provide legal cover, which means that it covers you for if you've got problems with the police, for instance, and getting reviews and whatever. They also give you advice in regards to your cabinets and stuff like that. So your organisation that you're part of helps you out a lot as well with that. And that actually shows to the police that you are responsible. And you don't even need to have a firearms certificate to get your shooting insurance, your own personal shooting insurance. Do that. And some are only about £40 a year. Like most of you guys will probably spend more than that on lunch. I wish I could, but that's a completely different story. Stalking and getting into deer stalking recreationally, or even getting involved with the whole nature restoration when it comes to deer management, doesn't need to break the bank. It doesn't need to be expensive, and it definitely doesn't need to be elitist. And that is one of the things I have tried to do over the last 5 to 10 years, even longer, is to make this industry more open to people. And it's starting to get there. It's starting to get easier for people to be able to go and harvest their own deer. Bear in mind, a nice little roe deer could feed your family for, if depending on the size of your family, you could get a good few meals out of that, You can mince it up, get yourself a mincer, and mince it up and make it into lasagnas and all different types of food, bolognese, chilies. The list goes on. Pasties, you can make pasties. You get these crimp things that I've got, and you can make a puff pastry pasty out of it, and things like that. It is fantastic, and it's good for you. Venison is hugely good for you, like everything else in part of a mixed diet, but it's low on fat, it's low on calories, and it's very high on protein. It's got lots of good nutrients and high in iron and things like that. So it's good to eat venison, and being part of the whole process, being part of something bigger, being part of the future conservation, having a say in the future conservation, and not just being in your living room and going, oh, this is what I believe in regards to shooting deer, and somebody coming up to say, have you ever shot a deer? No, but I've got my opinions on it. It's okay to have your opinions on it, but if you're not actually part of it, if you're not part of the conversation, you're not part of the community, then your opinions are actually irrelevant in many ways, because it's not an informed opinion. It's just an emotional one. It's one that is being indoctrined by a certain belief. Either way, whether you're for or against shooting deer, it's if you've not been part of the actual process and actually know what's going on, you cannot get involved logically in the conversation and into the debate, because the experience isn't there. And that is one of the biggest things about the emotional side and the political side of deer management and deer in the UK in general, and hunting in general throughout the whole UK, is that the people who have most of the big opinions that affect the industry actually know nothing or know very little about the actual industry, the ins and outs, the reasoning, the amount of work that goes into it, the benefits that outweigh the downsides, the sheer passion that goes into the conservation of this ground from the hunting and from the recreational sport community, the amount of money that is involved. And that is a big thing. Money. For nature restoration, you need money. Now, for ecology and conservation, you need money. And without any of this, there's no money. People just don't have money these days to hand over to folk. It's very, very difficult. And unless somebody has got an unlimited bucket there, you cannot do, you've got to do the grassroots stuff, and you have to make money from it so that you can respend that money and invest it back into conservation. But that's a topic for another day. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight on how you as an individual can get into deer stalking, and while being in deer stalking, also being part of the bigger conversation and the bigger part of, you have an equal part in the ecology and conservation and the deer management of the UK and wherever else you live, because you are part of it. The minute you take the start of your journey to the point where you make that first booking with a guide, or even that thought of, I would like to do that, that's the start of the journey of being part of the bigger conversation and the bigger debate on regards to deer management in the British Isles. You have got an equal part in it. And genuinely, I think that's amazing. So start your journey, enjoy your journey, and learn lots. That's what you need to do, because every day is a school day. Every one of us in this industry learns every single day. Something new happens. Thank you for listening to another FSS podcast. I'll catch you next week. We'll talk about something completely different, something away from deer. We might talk about calibers. I haven't decided yet, but we will. Anyway, have a good one, and I'll catch you again. Bye.